Welcome to Attendance Tips. We are going to look at different tips and tricks for taking proper attendance when things change, what it looks like in a teacher's grade book, what you're doing on your end, what parents can see, etc. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share this link with you. You guys can have access to my slides. I'm not going to go through the entire presentation, but if you want to follow along with it, you can take your own notes, but the scenarios will be in there for future reference. So the first thing I want to do talk about is the changes per due. We know that attendance has been in the process of changing. Um, so the changes that due is proposing are optional for fiscal year 26, so the current school year that we are in. But by August 1st of the next school year, 26-27, districts must adopt a new policy with specific requirements to address chronic absenteeism. So that is new. I know a lot of people are looking at different policies and so forth because that has to be in place for next school year. Medical will no longer be excluded from the total hour. It will be counted in the hours towards chronic absenteeism. So, for example, now a student can have all medical excused and they would still have perfect attendance because it's not counting towards their um, total absenteeism. Um, now, medical will just be an excused absence. So it has been suggested by software or uh, progress book that medical, the qualifier is changed from medical to an absence. So it does get included in those total hours. And that would be something you could change now. Um, y- it definitely will need to be changed in the summer, but they will probably have that in the release during the summertime. Religious expression days are allowed based on district policy. Most districts use that as a non-absence day. Out of school suspensions will not count towards habitual truancy, but will count towards the chronic absenteeism. And districts will be required by law to communicate about attendance concerns no later than when a student has missed 5% of the minimum number of hours for any reason. So, whether it's medical, excused, unexcused. So, depending on what grade level it is, depends on their total hours. So, it's approximately 45 to 50 hours. Discussion has been most districts will probably send something out prior to the 5% to give them a warning. Okay, again, changes are optional for this school year, but have to be in place for next school year. Additional things, EMIS is removing some stuff from their section, which will remove the student truancy and excessive absences, which is the FT record. And for the next school year, the FS attendance, which is reported to EMIS, will be changed to an FM record and sent to the data collector for student absenteeism. And then those are from the frequently asked questions from the Department of Education and Workforce. So I'm going to jump out of here. If you want to stay in and look through things, you are more than welcome to. But I'm going to get into our test environment. So our fake high school, so we can look at some of these things that are going on. So first, when you are working in student information, you will notice that some of the menu choices, it's called attendance, but then some of the reports, some of the things that we're going to, they use the word absence. So just be aware when you're typing things in the go to box or looking for things that they do switch between attendance and absences. So the first thing that we are going to look at are our absence types. Um, I'm just going to type that in the go to box. So there's a couple things to look at. We're going to kind of look at these, make sure they're set up. These do carry over during SYI, so they get copied up each year. If if the district would like to change these and, add, remove, things like that, that is something that should be done at the summer, whether it's at the district or at the building level. So right now I am looking at my test high school. So while we're looking at this, you'll see that some of these are locked. That means that these have been created at the district level. So I'm going to switch to the district level so you can see I have two absences here. Many districts did this with the medical excuse because um, they were medical was not being used um, towards the um, absence hours. So they wanted consistency throughout the district, so they used the district level to create the medical absences. Now that medical is going to be changing and will be counted in the hours towards chronic absenteeism, our qualifiers might change for them, but you still might want the names to be consistent throughout the buildings. One building might use EX, et cetera. Another building might spell it out completely. So for consistency, you might want to create things at the district level if you have access to do that. So we're just going to focus at the building level. So of course, I can't modify those because they were created at that district level. But when we're looking at these, there's different things, the code, the name, description, all the way across. So we're going to break one down. We're just going to look at an excused absence because that's typically everybody has that one. So my code is an A. So for absence, this does go over to gradebook. So be aware whatever your code name is should be meaningful for teachers as well. The name is whatever you name it. So it's something that is going to relate to that absence type. And then the description. It's important to use the description, and we'll look at that here in just a little bit with our tardy. But if in a lot of times it's just duplicated what the name is, but the description is for you and you only, or whoever is working in that building. So it doesn't go anywhere. So it could be informational information for you to have in that area. The qualifier is the important one. This is how it is determined, how it is calculated for the student. So you can see we have a few different ones. We have late and tardy. So they come in late, they leave, or they come in tardy, they leave early. Partial would be a partial day. Same thing. It could be, they leave midway through the day. Absence is a full day. So, they're gone all day. And then non-absence, those would be things like school field trips, college visits, things that's not going to count against their hours of being out of the classroom. Okay. Tardy and partial have to have a time in or a time out, or it will not calculate anything towards the student's absenteeism. Next is the absence groups. Okay, it does default to none. So that's the most popular one. Medical, like I said, medical is not currently calculating towards the absence hours, but medical does now need to be included for chronic absenteeism. So if these aren't changed this year, it definitely needs to be changed next year unless the software itself changes. But right now, anything that is marked as medical does not count towards the total hours of being absent. Same with out of school suspension. So, out of school suspension will count towards chronic absenteeism, but it will not count towards the habitual truancy. So, that is what that group means. So use for daily attendance, this is so it can be used for the daily attendance for the student. Period attendance, we do not use within student information. We use in gradebook. Um, and if you want this absence type to be available for period attendance for teachers in gradebooks, it does have to be checked in student information in order for it to be available to be checked in gradebook. If it is not checked for period attendance here, it is not available to be active in gradebook. Report to EMIS is no longer used. It will eventually be removed from the absence type screen. EMIS uses the totals from the FS tab now when they're reporting their information. And then, of course, is active. We're using this one and we want it available, so we want that checked. So the other one to look at is again is our tardies. So tardies, anything that is late or tardy or partial has to have a time in or a time out. And this is where these descriptions are important. So, for example, if I'm looking at my tardy, just saying tardy means nothing. I can say enter. Um, so it gives it a little bit more information. So maybe if you're out for the day and somebody's taking attendance for you, you know that if they add the tardy, that they have to enter a time in or a time out. Same with anything that is marked as partial. Next, we are going to go look at gradebook. Okay, so how attendance officially starts. And let me make sure I have my teacher. So the teacher takes attendance. So they have what is called daily attendance. They take it, once a day, whether it's their first period of the day, whether it's a homeroom class, whatever it might be. So I'm going to take daily attendance for my Algebra 6 class. This is the one that takes attendance. So if I click on my daily attendance, okay, it's going to show me what class, or if it's a homeroom, usually they only have one class available to take attendance, so they're not taking it randomly throughout the day because this does report back to student information. Period attendance taken in gradebook does not report back to student information. So if I go through here and I mark these, so here's what happens. A teacher only has access to mark them as unexcused. When a student comes in or a student's missing in the morning, they don't know if they're signing in the office. They don't know, if they called in to say that they have a doctor's appointment first thing in the morning. The teacher just knows that they're not in class, so they're going to mark them as absent. Um, Once they click on save, they no longer can edit. So if they accidentally mark somebody unexcused, they have to call the office so that it can be removed. And we will look at that in just a little bit here with Terry, that he was accidentally marked. But the real person that was absent is Tim. So we're going to go in and say unexcused. We're going to hit save. Now we're going to go back into student information. So once those are marked, if I look at my daily list, okay, I can see Terry is marked in here as a full absence and Tim is marked in here as a full absence. I get that phone call. Mrs. Gaslow says, I accidentally marked Terry. He's not supposed to be absent. He's here. So you can edit if you need to edit, okay? But we can't remove from here. So we're just going to click on the checkbox and we're going to say delete selected. Be cautious of this because once you delete, it is completely gone. You cannot bring it back. And then Tim is the one that, parent called in and it's changed. So it's at unexcused. We're going to click on the pencil. It is no longer going to be unexcused. Maybe he's going on a college visit. So we're going to switch this to college visit. You will see my qualifier turns to a non-absence because that will not be included in his hours absent. If I want to add a reason or a note, I could. And then any of them can have a time in or time out, including a full absence. But in this case, a college visit, it's a full day. So I'm going to leave it as is. And then comments. We're going to talk about comments in a little bit, but comments can show up on parent access. So be cautious. So I'm going to save this. So now Tim is now a college visit. So let's go back to gradebook and see what happened in gradebook. So if I go back to my algebra, I now have the attendance showing here that it is now a college visit. And if I look at my daily attendance screen, it has updated from unexcused to college visit. And notice Terry is back to having the drop down because his absence was removed. So while we're here, we're going to look at Tim in Parent Access real quick. Because if I go to Parent Access and I'm going to look at my student, there is an attendance tab. So if a parent is looking at that, you can see here that Tim has several absences, and today has already been adjusted to a college visit. If a parent logs in prior to the office changing from unexcused to a college visit, a parent is going to see that. It is a live change. You can see right here that it's a read from student information. Then in the details, okay, you can see here that it will automatically populate a reason. And in this case, it is showing a comment. So if you are using those comments thinking, you know, you're marking it for yourself, saying mom called in or dad called in, or, this is the fifth day that this student's been absent, depending on the settings of your district, parents might be able to see those. So be cautious what you're putting into them until you find out if your district is using comments on parent access. Your progress book point person would be, or a PA admin would be the one to check the setting. It is under PA admin. It is under district settings, and it is per building. It is called attendance comments. You can either show them or hide them. So if they are hidden for the district or for the building, I'm going to save that. We'll see if I can just refresh my page. I didn't think so. I thought I'd try. Let me go back to Tim. And his attendance tab. And you should see now that the comment is gone. Reason will always display, and that is something that we're going to look at. Okay, so I'm going to go back to student information, go back to our absence types. And a lot of this is set up and it carries over year to year, but knowing how it works, if you have to create a new one or if you need to change one, or if you're wondering why something is happening. So again, I talked about using those descriptions, put important information in here, time in, time out, whatever it might be. If you're using, short names over here, make sure the full name is over here. Example, if you just use like UNEX for unexcused, you can spell out unexcused over here. The other things that you see inside of here are not here. Sorry, you'll see them when you're adding the attendance, but is an absence reason. So I'm going to type in absence reason. And you can see that they're coded. They have a name and a description. And then if they're available for use in daily attendance. Again, we don't use period attendance in student information, so this column is kind of null here. But if we look at this, it's just giving it a name. So if you're like, well, I don't know why mine says this, these are generated per building. So every building can be a little bit different, or they can also be created at the district level, like you see here for this test one, was created at the district level for everybody to use. So if your district wants consistency for those reasons that will be seen in parent access, they can be created at the district level. Okay, and just looking at it, it is giving it a code and giving it a name and description. The description goes nowhere, and then we're making sure that it's active. Our next one is our absence notes. And these are basically for reference. But when you are marking a student absent, it is something that you can mark so you don't have to type in. And it's in this case, it's, you know, call from home, a letter from home, a message was left, the parent came in, whatever it might be. Those are the options. And then, of course, they can be created at the district level as well. Okay. So we are going to look at something. Let me get my student in context here. So when a student has any type of absence that is either partial or tardy, it has to have an in time or an out time. Okay, so student attendance. So you can see that I have a tardy here. Now I'm going to skip to a different one, a different student. So looking at him, let's edit his tardy. So you can see that it's tardy, and then I have to put my in time or out time. You can type, but you do have to include the AM or PM, or you can use the time drop down, making sure that you choose the correct AM or PM. Okay. Now, with that being said, there is an important report. So it is in the Analytic Hub. It is called the Attendance Processing Warning Report. So if I look under my attendance, I have it starred. So you can star 5 different reports in the Analytic Hub, ones that you might use all the time. And then your recent reports will show things that you were working on for the day. So you can tell I've been working with attendance, so all of my attendance reports are available there. So I'm going to look at this attendance processing warning detail. So if I click on that, it's going to take me into the Analytics Hub. One note about the Analytics Hub, when you are processing this, like for example, the school name, if I click on the drop down and the elementary school is not there, that means that there's nobody that matches that criteria. So it's not going to populate that choice. So I'm just going to choose the test high school, student status. So notice I only have active resident. Well, that's the only one that might have this warning is a student that has an active student status. Grade levels will only populate for students that meet that criteria. And you can see in this case, I only have 11th grade. Now, in this case, the message it says is none or is not of one. So if I leave it blank, it will look for any messages. If I want to use a specific message, because maybe we're midway through the year and we know we have several students on the warning page, then you can come here and say is one of and check the ones that you want to populate. I'm going to click OK. And what this report does is it looks at all of the students, and if there's an issue, especially with the partial or the late, it's going to tell you. The absence has been excluded because the time in or time out is outside of the school day. So you're like, well, no, he got there at 9:20. I marked 9:20. So let's go back and look at Ben Adams. Oh, so looking at his attendance, I am going to go to, oh, no, I want to go to student. I do that all the time. My school absences, and then looking at his tardy, you can see his time in is accidentally in the PM versus AM. So if that's the case, I can come through here. I can adjust, say 9, 10, and make sure I have AM. And then hit done. It's going to update it. Once I hit save, it should be correct. And then I can go back and run that report again. And then Ben would be gone. The report actually wouldn't have anybody on there because all of my warnings have been fixed. Next, Let's look at lunches. So, lunches are important for House Bill 410 because a student is not counted as absence during their lunchtime. So, in the case of my school, I made it simple, gave them a half-hour lunch. So, if the student leaves from noon to 12:30, they are not counted absence during that time. So, let's go to our courses and look to make sure our lunches are set up correctly. So under our courses, okay, you can look at the type or you can type in the course name. So I'm going to start typing in lunch and I have a lunch. So I'm going to say search. There's two things that you want to make sure for sure that are set up correctly for any of your lunches. So I'm going to click on my edit pencil. The first is making sure on the miscellaneous tab that it is set for a lunch. So the course type is the only thing, well, and the grade levels is what is required on here. It can't be a class, it can't be a study hall, it can't be an extra. It just needs to be a lunch because when a course type is set to lunch, it knows that that time that it is scheduled for should not count towards the student's absence hours. Okay. And then again, you can pick the grade levels. The other important thing is because this is a non-instructional time on the EMIS tab, it needs to be unchecked to report to EMIS because we don't want that calculating in there. The next thing that I'm going to look at is my course sections, making sure that they're set up correctly. So I'm going to go back one level and go to my course sections. I'm just going to click on my course type and go to my lunches and say search. So you might have these broken down into, if you're at the elementary level, maybe all first grade eats at one time, second grade eats at one time, and so forth. At the high school level, you might have, lunch A, lunch B, lunch C, making sure that you have those periods of the day in there. So depending on what building you're at, you might have more lunches than others. So when I'm looking at this, there's an important thing that I want to look at is the meeting time. So you can see here I have meeting time 4 and meeting time 5. So if I click on my edit pencil, I want to look at the meeting times tab. In here, I want to make sure that the correct period of the day is selected. Okay. And for my elementary, I know we don't have necessarily periods of the day. Um, that they're gonna be attending lunch, but you need to make sure depending on when those students are at lunch, you might assign a period for each of the grade levels, and then those grade levels have to have times in the periods of the day. So, once that is selected, the next thing I need to do is make sure that my periods of the day have the times of my lunch. So in my go-to, I am going to type in periods of the day. So every day is separate, and we do see sometimes, Monday through Thursday has the correct times in there, and Friday was skipped for some reason, or maybe Wednesday was skipped. So double check your periods of the day to make sure. These times should carry up during SYI, but we've noticed sometimes when we copy these up, um, they copy over blank. We don't know why, so then they have to be manually entered. So it's always good to double check to make sure that they are correct. So if I click on Monday, I can see fourth period is from noon to 12:30, and then fifth period is from 12:30 to 1. Those are the only times that have to be in here, so it knows the duration of time that it should not count towards an absence. So for example, if our school day is from I'm just going to use easy numbers, 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and the student is absent all day, they don't get 6 hours of absence. They only get 5.5 because half hour of it was lunchtime. So um, that's not accounted for in their total day. So it's important that those times are there. So if you're elementary, and 4th grade eats at, 10:15 to, 11 or 10:35 or, whatever it is, make sure that those are in there and then schedule those periods to those grade levels so that those students' attendance are properly calculated. And again, double check because each day of the week is completely separate. Okay. So now let's look at a student. So we want to see a student that has a lunch scheduled to them. So if I look at Tim, he has 4th period lunch, or sorry, 5th period lunch. So it's during, that 5th period time slot. So we know that if he leaves at 12 o'clock and returns at 1 o'clock, and his lunch is from 12:30 to 1 o'clock, he's only being charged with a half hour of absence because a half hour was lunchtime. Lori, I see your question. I am going to talk about the absence levels when we're putting in an absence. So if you can hold on, I'll kind of discuss that just a little bit. So next, we need to look at our master calendar. So when I'm looking at my master calendar, okay, important things that we're going to look at. We're going to look at our start time and our end time. We're not going to change them, but we're looking at them. We're also going to look at our planned school days and our non-attending days. Okay? Because obviously, a day such as an in service day, a teacher cannot take attendance. So, for some reason, if it was marked as a teacher's in service, but the students are in session, the teachers are gonna come to you and say, "I can't take attendance, I can't take my homeroom attendance." So this would need to be updated so that it is a school day. So this is where you would double check what type of day it is. Now, what we've had in the past, and tickets have come in for this, is that there's been a delay or an early release. Well, especially the delay. So they come in here and they want to edit. So for example, there was a power outage and I'm going to come in here, we started 2 hours later. They're coming in here and changing this to calamity. Well, then teachers can't take attendance. It is still a full school day. We will talk about adjusting those times if it is an unplanned delayed start or early release. So it should still be a school day for teachers to be able to take attendance. So next, we looked at our calendar. We double checked our school attendance days. Now we need to look at our sub calendars. So when we're looking at our sub calendars, so the first one I'm going to look at is my default. So I'm going to click on the edit pencil and you're going to see some things that were set by that master calendar. My start date and my end date. Not sure what's going on here. Again, this is the test database, but I'm not sure. Um, So obviously those were adjusted somewhere at some point in time. But this should have the start time, or this should actually be blank for your default calendar. So it's going to show your start date and your end date and so forth. So this is set when you're creating your master calendar. Looking at other sub calendars, for example, our early release students. If we look at our early release students, couple things to look at here. These should only be filled out if it is different from my master calendar. Okay. So if my master calendar is saying that it's from 8:05 to 3:05 and the students get to leave at 1:45, I'm only going to put the stop time here because they're still coming to school at the original time. They're just leaving early. I don't need to put a start date or an end date because it's just going to go by the master calendar. And I will never change the hours per day because that's set based on the master calendar, not what we're doing for the sub calendar. If something needs to be changed, such as an early release or an unplanned, delayed start, that's done in your exceptions, and we'll look at that here in a little bit. So, with that being said, what's going to happen is the attendance calculator is going to come here and look at what calendar the student is on, and then look at the sub calendars to say, okay, this student is on the early dismissal. So, it's going to look here and see what the stop time is and then calculate their percentage based on that. If they are just on the default calendar, then it's going to go to the FD tab and look at their percent of time. If they have, a sub calendar that's adjusted, plus they have adjusted percent of time, the sub calendar will occur first and then the FD percent of time. Okay. If we have something like our seniors, so they might get out early, or our kindergartners start late, or preschool start late. You might have staggered start, so they're going to have an adjusted start time. So in this case, when I come to one of these, notice my start time and my end time are blank, and they should be blank because they're going to attend school at the normal time. However, it is my end date here that is going to be different than my master calendar date. Okay. And then this is only applying to 12th grade students, so it'll only allow me to apply it to them. Again, my hours are staying the same. It is just adjusting this end time. So that's something else to look at. One other thing that you can look at, and I don't have a student set up with this. Oh, I need to be at the district level. If you have access to this when you are registering a student or a student is registered, they might be registered in multiple buildings. So, for example, an eighth grade student might be going to the high school for Algebra 1. And so the high school is taking attendance and then they are returning back to the middle school where they will have instruction the rest of the day. When there is split buildings, it automatically defaults to 50-50, and a majority of our students that are between 2 buildings are not attending 50-50. So it would need to be adjusted. So what that does is it looks at the percent of time that they are spent in the building, calculates it based on the total hours of the day to figure out the maximum amount of absence time that they could be in that building or the other building. Okay. So again, if something is not populating correctly, if the student is dual enrolled in multiple buildings, double check to make sure that their calendar percentages are correct. So now let's start looking at all of our absences. So we have everything set up in the back, making sure everything is correct. Let's look at some things. So the first one, and some of you might have access to this here, some of you might have access to the individual building that you're working at. So these quick links are a little bit different for each of the districts, but a lot of people use them here. So I can click on that, and I have to be at the high school level, or I can go to SIS and it's in my attendance and my daily absence. So this is going to show a visual of who is absent for today. So I can look through here. This is where, it populates from gradebook. I can make the adjustments. So for example, Betty was tardy. She came in late. She overslept. She came in. Now she's going to leave. So she came back to the office and said, I'm still not feeling well. I need to go home. So she can have multiple absence events for the same day. So I'm going to put this as excused. We called mom. Mom knows she's coming home. She's ill. So this is that absence level that there was a question about. So the absence level, there's only two that really work, is your non-absence and your full absence. If it is a full day absent, based on the qualifier, okay, it will populate full absence, okay, or it should be a full absence. If it is anything such as a partial, such as a college visit, whatever that it might be, it is going to be a non absence. Remember, this absence level does nothing with the calculation of the student's attendance. That is based on the qualifier. And notice I cannot change the qualifier here. Okay. It had to be changed in my assignment type or absence types. So those absence reasons are the ones that are created either at the district or the building level. So you can pick one of those. Remember, the absence reason does show on parent access. Okay, so if you leave it blank, it'll just be blank. But if you use one of these, it will populate on there. Absence notes, again, is for yourself. These are set at the building or district level, so you can add it as needed, but it's just something for you so you can see a little bit more for that student. And then if it is something that is, you know, partial or a tardy, you would have to have a time in or a timeout. But in this case, the student is leaving. Maybe it is 10:30. They only made it a couple hours. So I am going to say they are out at 10:30 and then I can hit save. And yet I could put this as a partial absence as well if I wanted to do it that way. So not everybody uses the partial. They just use the time in or timeout. So now once I hit save, you can see Betty has 2 absence events for today. So she has the tardy, and then where did her other one go? There it is. Her excused at 10:30, she went out. Okay. So there are a couple reports that we can look at. Also be aware, hold on, let me go back into Betty. Also be aware right now if your district has not changed your medical to just a regular absence type, okay? So the qualifier, if it's still marked as medical, it will not calculate in the total number of absences. So just be aware of that. So if you're going to leave it as is for the remainder of this year, that will have to be updated for next year, making sure that all medical is included. So in my Analytic Hub, there is a report in my attendance. It is called my daily absence list. So if I look at that, it allows me to put a date range. And sorry, the Analytic Hub does take a while to populate. And you'll see, I'm just going to do my active residents, and then I can include today's date. So I'm going to have is between today, say okay. And basically, this is the same list that I was looking at on the screen, but now I can print if needed. So it's going to show me who the student is, their excuse, etc. And then you can see here, here's Betty Boop. She has 2. She had the tardy, she came in late, and then she left early. Another tip is if I look at my students, so I have a student in context, yes, I can go to my SIS student and attendance, but in the I want to, and they will be changing this with all the new laws coming into place and so forth, but nothing has been changed yet. Our student absence intervention, if I click on that, I can also quickly get to my student absences. So it's about the same amount of clicks, but I can click there and it takes me in to show me my individual student. Okay, I am going to get a student in context. Well, I guess I don't have to, but for a student in context, I can add an absence event from multiple areas. So one, I can add it from having the student in context, or I can add it from the daily absence list. So we're going to do it here. So I'm going to say add an absence. Okay. So for today's date, if I was adding it, maybe Justin brought in a note that said they're going to be on vacation starting today all the way through next Friday. I can put in the multiple days, the absence type. So if I say, if this is, excused, I'll put it on excused. You'll see it automatically will populate the absence level to a full absence. If you can change that to a non, again, the qualifier is what calculates my absence reasons. If I want to put a note in, there was a letter. And then if I want to put vacation. Now, you will see, so if I have maybe there's siblings, so there's multiple students, and I want to get this all added in there. If I say retain value before I click on save, if I click on save, okay, it's going to save that for the student. If I put another student in context, oh, I already had an absence for him. Sorry. So if I put another student in context and say add absence, then you can see all that information is still completed. So, if there's a family and you're putting in the absences, you can do that and then go through each of the family members. Because if you pull up the name in context here, and there's, 5 siblings, then you can just scroll through and you can quickly add those absences by going through each of the students. Remember when you are adding this, okay, let me go back to oh, I think it was Abraham. Yeah. When you're going through this, remember here those comments. That is based on what the parent access setting is. So be cautious what is going in there. Okay. Next is using the daily attendance. So I can go through there as well. So if I have my daily attendance list up, I can click on add student from here. So if I have a student and I can start typing in their name. Barbara's absent. I can say add the student. It's going to populate. Notice it also kept that information because I had the retained value. So if I don't want that used anymore, now I can adjust as needed. I can remove the vacation and hit save, and now that's been applied to her. So again, you can do it by individual student, or you can do it from the daily absence list. If you have a large number of students, say for example, a grade level, the 10th grade's going on a field trip to the JVS, so it's their preview day. So you want to add those absences to all the students that are going. So there's a quick way. This is called your fast entry. So under attendance, I could do a fast entry. So again, you can just start marking things to see, what's going to apply. So I'm going to do this as a mistake because I want you to see I'm going to leave this as unexcused, but I have all my normal absences. If they're leaving at a specific time, I can put those down. Um, I can pick a specific grade level. Okay. Or I can enter student IDs if I have a list of students that I know are going, but a lot of times it's by grade level. So that is the nice thing. I can say, okay, I want to search for all of I'm going to say 12th grade students. So in this case, all of this is going to be applied. I want to preview my students. So it's going to show me all of my students, and then you can see here the students that already have absences are listed here. Now, you'll also notice sometimes some of these students are grayed out. That means that they are on a different calendar, and this is a non-attending day for that student. So, for example, our 12th graders towards the end, you're not going to mark them all absent because our calendar said that they're supposed to be gone that day. So, if you see a student grayed out, double check their calendar because they're on a non attending day. So if I wanted to mark everybody, I can put check and then Corey can still go because he came in, Betty leaving and the other Betty or the tardy. Oh, that's the tardy one. And then she's leaving, so I'm not going to select that. But now if I hit save, there's going to be an unexcused absence applied to all of my students. So I'm going to hit save. So now my daily list would look absolutely crazy because all of these students are listed on there as unexcused. And you're like, oh no, I wasn't supposed to do that. I was supposed to mark them as a field trip. Well, you're lucky. Under attendance, same place, and the fast entry, there's also a fast delete. So if I look at this, I can search by grade level. I know I applied it to my 12th grade students. Okay. And I know that I want to search for them to remove that absence type. Okay, so I'm going to click on preview students. It's going to show me all my students that have been marked as unexcused. Okay, so again, once it's deleted, it's gone. You can't say, well, oh, I kind of want that back. You would have to do another fast entry. So I'm like, yep, those are all the ones I want, making sure that somebody wasn't really absent for the day. So maybe Doug was actually absent. I can uncheck that student and then I can say delete. And Doug would remain and everybody else is removed. Okay. Any questions before we look at reports? Okay, several reports that we're going to look at. We're not going to look at them all because most of the reports under your attendance reports still calculate days, not hours. Okay, so be cautious of that. So we're only going to look at three of them because they do provide general information. So other ones that have been used in the past that don't calculate properly anymore is your R500 and your perf for your perfect attendance. There are other reports that we'll talk about in the Analytic Hub that will provide some of that information. So our R7, our 307, if I click on that, it allows me to be able to see the students' absences. Okay, so it's kind of a nice way to kind of break it down. I can see by grade level who is absent. And I should have this automatically. So if I look here, it's going to kind of show me for what day, who was tardy, who was unexcused. This was my bigger day today, who was on a college visit, excused, unexcused, etc. So it's going to populate all that information for me. So again, it's not showing me my total hours, but it is showing me some details if it's a full absence, non-absence, or the time in or time out. The next one that I want to show you is the R 309. So there's two of them. So one is your details and one is your summary. And again, I don't have a lot of absences in here. So it doesn't show a ton, but you can at least see some of it. So I can use a date range. So, and this is going to show me the students in that date range. So I'm going to leave everything else blank. It's going to sort it by grade level, then the student, and I'm going to hit submit. It should populate. Let's see if it'll populate real quick. Just click on the one that's pre-made. I was trying to get more in there, but you can see here's the student, when they were absent and what type of absence it was. Then I'll go through each of our students. So if we look through, and if I do a control find, look at somebody like Tim Burr who has multiple absences, you can see here that he's on there. So that is the details report. If I go back and I look at the summary report, this is going to give you a nice overview of each of the grade levels. So again, I'm just doing a date range from the beginning of the school till now. And I want to look at it. It's going to be grouped by grade level and I'm going to hit submit. We'll look at that one. at the one. So you can see here are all my 10th graders. Okay. And you see that it's days absent. Okay. So don't look at it's not the hours absent, but it's going to show each of my students and how many days absent. In the Analytic Hub, so let me close out of those. We're going to go into the Analytic Hub, and I'm not going to go through all of these because the Analytic Hub does take some time. But a couple that are very important, especially now with the changes that are coming into play. In my attendance, we already talked about our process warnings. The skipped students is also important. So this will say why their attendance was skipped. And a lot of times it might be because they have perfect attendance. There's no attendance for that student. But you have your yearly absence summary. So your yearly absence summary is a good report that will show all of your hours of absence, excused, medical, and unexcused, as well as your suspensions. But beware when you are looking at this report, and I'll bring up a student so you can see how this works. When you're looking at this report, remember if it is in the medical group, as medical, not as none, that it won't calculate in our total absence hours. Okay, so be aware of that. So then this report is also interactive. Okay, so if I click on this for a student, so I can click on it and it should populate their daily absence. So you can see it'll populate for today. Then if I have, and let me find somebody that has more absences. Let's find Timber. So it should populate each of the absences and how many hours of absence. Okay. Remember, this does not include medical. And why is it 3.5? Because if we look and this report tells me he is resident attending the JVS part-time. So on his FS is only 50%. Another one that I want to talk about is our EMIS attendance hours. And this is a spreadsheet of everything. So we just saw that. We could see our daily, we can see, the total number, but this is going to be a full spreadsheet. So this is called our EMIS attendance hour summary. So this is kind of going to be the main report for a while until all of the attendance details get into place. But if I look at this, it is going to have everything. You can export this one into Excel. So if you do want to include those absence or the medical hours into the total, you can export, add the column, do your calculation, and it will bring it up. So you can see here's Tim. It's going to show, the number of hours in attendance, his excused hours, and then his percent of time absent. And then remember, he was only attending 50% of the time, so that it's basing it on that. So again, I can export this and then add in whatever I need. Okay, and there's a few other reports that I stressed there. We'll look at one more as we go through the scenarios in 1 minute. But pay attention to those. Those are the popular ones that are going to provide the hours of information that you need for attendance. So looking at our scenarios, again, these are in the PowerPoint or the Google slideshow, if you want to refer back to them. But scenario A is looking at a snow day. So this is a full, complete snow day. So it is no longer an attending day. So that is the only case if it is a full day that you would change your master calendar from a school day to a non-attending. So for example, on the 21st, power went out, students didn't go to school. It is a complete calamity day. So we are going to say calamity. Notice it takes the count to 0 because it is not included. So I'm going to hit save. It's done. Now teachers cannot take attendance. And if we look here, on the 21st, it was a snow day. It was a school day, but now it is a calamity day. The next is scenario B. This is if it is a delayed start of, so maybe there's snow on the road, we're coming in late, whatever it might be, or early release, we're sending them home for some reason. We did lose power through the day, and we're going to send them home at a certain period of time. So, if you're working on this, if it is any shortened time, it is still going to be a school day. So it is not changed here. Okay. So we are not changing it here. What we're going to do is look at our calendar bulk exceptions. So this is how it knows how many hours that it's supposed to calculate. So if I click on my bulk exceptions, okay, it's still using the regular calendar day because we are coming into school at some point in time. Okay. If we're delayed for 2 hours, so instead of coming in um, at 7:30, we're now coming in at 9:30 a.m. Okay. So it's going to adjust that. So it knows, hey, I'm looking at it. We started at 7:30. We're now coming in at 9. So even if somebody had a pre-planned or they called in sick already and it was going to be a full day absence, it's not going to calculate the full time. Okay. So, and then I want to add my exception. So if they are, it's an unplanned shortened day because it's a 2-hour delay. So now instead of being at school for 6.5, we are here for 4.5. Okay. So we're gonna update that. And then if you wanted to go to all of your calendars, well, of course, I wanted to go to my default, my early dismissal, depending if you wanted to go to your JVS calendar, senior calendar, or you can just check them all. If you check them all, there's no attendance for our non-attending, so it doesn't really affect that, but then I can hit save. And then so now it's going to calculate any student that has a full absence as 4.5 hours over 5.5 or 6.5 hours. And then their lunch again would be accommodated in there if they did leave part of the day. Scenario C, we already talked about double checking your AM and PM when you're looking at your student absences with those times in and out, making sure that they did not get crossed. So making sure that it is correct. I did want to bring up an example. Um, my poor kids, they always get so this is my daughter. She's had to go to physical therapy, so she's missed a lot of school. So looking at parent access, so I see this stuff as a parent. This is what a parent is seeing. So again, the absence type, the absence reason. So you can see they have different reasons than what I have in my demo database. And then my arrival or dismissal time. And you can see they do theirs a little differently because delayed start days she would come in a little bit later, so they would put her there as being dismissed at the start of the day, and then when she would arrive. Um, but if, you're just leaving or arriving at a specific time, you can do it that way. So this is a normal day. This is they would include those for any days that were the delayed start. Okay. So again, just be cautious what you're putting in attendance because sometimes parents get to see that. Scenario E is our mismatched calendars. If calendars are mismatched, so there are two calendars. One is on the general tab, that's our attendance calendar, and then on the FD tab is the reporting calendar. Um, so if those don't match, attendance won't calculate for that student at all. It will not populate on the report card, etc. So there is a report in the Analytics Hub. It is under EMIS, It is our admission calendar comparison. If I click on that and go through it, anybody that has calendars that don't match will populate in red. So it's a great feature to double check periodically because we're moving students around all the time. So maybe a student decided that they don't want to attend the JVS anymore, so they're coming back. Well, maybe you changed one tab from the non attending, but you forgot the FD tab, or vice versa. So this calendar is going to match them. And then if they are mismatched, you can come here, see which one is on the FD tab, and then this one is on the general tab. Are there any last minute questions? I'm sorry, I went a little bit over.